Before I tell you the 5 habits, I need you to hear something that most people will never admit to themselves. There is a version of you that wakes up every single morning and within the first 30 minutes quietly dismantles every prayer you have ever made for abundance. Not out of malice, not out of laziness, out of ignorance. And the sages, the ones who spent lifetimes studying the invisible architecture of prosperity, they saw this pattern centuries ago. They named it, they warned against it, and almost nobody listened. My name is Yehonatan Eliezer Orendorff. I have spent the last 22 years studying the intersection of ancient Hebraic wisdom and the practical mechanics of financial transformation. I have sat with families in crisis. I have counseled men who had everything on paper and felt hollow, and men who had almost nothing and radiated a kind of wealth that made the room change temperature. And in all of those years, all of those conversations, one pattern repeated itself so many times that I stopped being surprised by it. The morning. The first hour of the morning is not just the beginning of a day. According to the ancient teachers, it is a threshold, what the Kabbalists called the Shachar gate, the gate of dawn light. Every soul passes through that gate fresh, carrying new potential, uncontaminated by the noise of the world. What you do in those first moments determines whether you open that gate or whether you quietly, unconsciously, slam it shut. I'm going to tell you 5 things that are slamming that gate shut for you right now. And I need you to stay with me until the end, because the fifth one is the one that took me the longest to understand. And it is the one that I have never seen discussed openly anywhere. I will reveal it in about 14 minutes. But first I need you to understand something about why morning matters more than any other time. The Talmudic scholar Rav Tzadok of Lublin, a man who had almost no material possessions, and yet was considered one of the wealthiest souls of his generation, wrote something in his private journals that was only translated and circulated in a small academic edition in the 1980s. He wrote, "The vessel that is formed in the first hour will hold everything that comes after. A cracked vessel formed in morning cannot carry the afternoon." A cracked vessel. That is what we are creating, most of us, every single morning. Now, let us talk about the 5 habits. Before I go into the first one, I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly in the comments. When was the last time you felt genuinely excited to wake up? Not obligated, not resigned, genuinely excited. Write your answer below. I want to read every single response because what you write there will tell me something about where you are in this journey. The first toxic morning habit is what the ancient teachers called tohu, formlessness. And in the modern world it looks like this. You wake up, and before your feet have touched the floor, your hand has already reached for your phone. I want you to really sit with what I just said. Before your feet touch the floor. That means you have not yet made contact with the earth beneath you. You have not yet taken a breath with intention. You have not yet allowed your mind to arrive fully in the day. And already you have handed your attention, your most precious resource, the resource that the ancient wisdom calls the or pnimi, the inner light. You have handed it to a machine that is specifically engineered to fragment it. Social media in the morning is not just a distraction. It is a form of spiritual contamination at the most vulnerable moment of your day. Here is why. When you sleep, your subconscious is doing deep repair work. The last thing you were thinking about before you slept, your problems, your fears, your unfinished business. Your sleeping mind is metabolizing all of that. And in the first moments of waking, there is a sacred window, roughly 12 to 15 minutes, where your mind is still in a semi-receptive state. Neuroscientists call it the hypnopompic state. The ancient teachers called it something I will not try to fully translate, but the closest approximation is the open ear of the soul. What you pour into that open ear sets the tone for everything. When you pour in a scroll of strangers' highlights, manufactured outrage and comparison traps, you are not just wasting time. You are telling your nervous system, the world is chaotic, I am behind, I am not enough, I need to catch up. And your nervous system believes you. It spends the rest of the day operating from that premise. In practical terms, this means every financial decision you make that day is slightly distorted by anxiety. Every opportunity you encounter is filtered through a lens of scarcity rather than possibility. The ancient remedy is simple and uncomfortable. Do not touch your phone for the first 30 minutes after waking. In those 30 minutes, do something that grounds you in your own life. Breathe. Write 3 lines of what you intend to receive today. Stand near a window. Let your body remember that it is alive. 7 days of this practice, and you will feel a shift. 14 days, and the people around you will notice it before you do. 30 days, and you will not recognize the person you were before. And I want to be precise about what I mean by grounding yourself. I am not prescribing a rigid ritual. I am not telling you to meditate for an hour or perform a ceremony that requires materials you do not own. I am telling you to arrive, to be present in your own life before you allow the world to speak to you. Some men I have worked with write a single sentence in a small notebook. Others stand by an open window for 3 minutes and simply breathe. Others speak quietly to themselves about what they hope the day will hold. The form does not matter as much as the intention behind it. The intention is this: I am here. I have arrived in this day. I receive what this day carries for me, and I am not yet chasing what it does not. That is a radical posture in a world that demands you be reactive from the first second of consciousness. It is also the posture of every person I have ever met who built something lasting. The second toxic morning habit is what I call eating the wound for breakfast. Let me explain what I mean. Most people, within the first hour of waking, review the list of everything that is wrong. The debt, the relationship that is difficult, the job that feels like a slow drain, the body that does not look the way they wish it looked. They do this review automatically, without even knowing they are doing it. It feels like being realistic. It feels like responsibility. It is not. It is a ritual of self-sabotage dressed up as practicality. The Mishnaic teachers had a concept they called cheshbon hanefesh, the accounting of the soul. It was a form of self-examination that they prescribed, but, and this is critical, it was never prescribed for morning. Morning was for elevation. The accounting was for evening, when the day's events could be weighed with perspective and the findings could be surrendered before sleep. Doing your accounting in the morning is like auditing your finances while you are trying to drive. You will crash the car. I remember sitting with a woman, I will call her Tzipora, though that is not her real name, who had been trying to build a small business for 3 years with very little progress. She was intelligent, capable, full of genuine desire to succeed. But every morning she woke up and spent the first 40 minutes mentally rehearsing everything that had gone wrong the previous day. She called it processing. In reality, she was welding herself to her past with chains she forged fresh every single morning. We changed one thing, just one. We gave her a morning decree, not an affirmation, those are too soft. A firm, non-negotiable declaration that she spoke aloud each morning before reviewing anything related to her business. 3 sentences spoken standing up, with her feet flat on the floor. Within 72 hours, she reported something she described as the first full breath I have taken in months. Within 30 days, she had closed the largest single client of her 3-year journey. What were the 3 sentences? I will tell you, not because words are magic in the way that popular culture sometimes suggests, but because the structure of them matters. She said, "Today I move forward from what I know, not from what I fear. Today my actions serve my future, not my regrets. Today I am available to receive what is already moving toward me." Spoken standing, spoken aloud, spoken with enough conviction that the body could register them as true. This is the ancient principle of keva, setting something as an anchor. The sages understood that the human mind is not naturally resistant to negativity. It has to be trained in the direction of what it wants. Morning is the only time of day when that training has the full backing of a rested nervous system and a relatively quiet internal landscape. Use it to anchor, not to audit. Was it the words? Was it the neurology? Was it something older and harder to name? I think you already know what I believe. I think you already know, somewhere in the part of you that has always known things before your mind caught up, that how you begin determines what you become. The third habit is the one I mentioned at the start, the one that 90% of people do without realizing it, the one that in my 22 years of studying these principles I have come to believe is the single most financially destructive pattern in modern life. Here it is, eating in chaos. I'm not talking about what you eat, though that matters. I'm talking about how you eat, where your attention is when food enters your body. Most people in the modern world eat their first meal of the day while looking at a screen, standing over a counter, driving, or in a state of low-grade urgency. They do not sit. They do not pause. They do not allow the meal to be a meal. It is fuel, rapidly administered to a machine that is already running at partial capacity. The ancient wisdom traditions, not just Hebraic but Essenic, early Christian monastic, Sufi, they all placed enormous emphasis on the sanctity of the morning meal. In the Kabbalistic tradition, there is a teaching about what happens to the energy of food when it is received in distraction versus when it is received in presence. The principle is this: your state of being at the moment of receiving determines the quality of what you receive. This is not just metaphor. Think about what it means to sit down with intention, to actually taste the food in front of you, to allow your body to register nourishment rather than simply process calories as a background task. Your cortisol drops. Your parasympathetic nervous system activates. Your brain, freed from the fight or flight mode that distracted eating keeps it in, begins to access the prefrontal cortex, the seat of creativity, strategic thinking, and financial decision-making. People who sit and eat their morning meal in intentional silence or quiet conversation make better financial decisions across the entire day. This is documented in research on decision fatigue and cortisol regulation, but it was also known by scholars who never owned a laboratory, who understood simply by watching how human beings flourish or decline over generations. If you want to change your financial reality, start by changing your breakfast table. I know that sounds small. I know you are sitting there thinking about market conditions and income ceilings and the cost of everything. I understand. But the teachers I have spent my life studying were not naive about material reality. They were deeply practical people who lived in conditions far more difficult than most of us will ever face. And they placed this emphasis on the morning meal not as a luxury, but as a survival strategy. Because they knew that the person who eats in peace makes better decisions than the person who eats in chaos. And in a life where every day presents dozens of financial micro-decisions, how to spend your time, where to direct your energy, which opportunity deserves your attention, and which is a distraction dressed up as a gift, the compounded advantage of clarity over anxiety is not small. It is everything. The fourth habit is one that will feel like an attack on something you are proud of, so I ask you to receive it with an open mind. The fourth habit is what I call the productivity illusion, and it looks like this. You wake up and immediately fill every available space with doing. You check your email. You review your calendar. You respond to messages. You listen to a podcast on the way to the kitchen. You are productive from the very first breath, and you feel good about this. You have been told your entire life that this is what success looks like. I want to offer you a different understanding. The ancient teachers spoke of the concept of bitul, a word that is often translated as self-nullification, but which I prefer to translate as sacred emptiness. There were specific times of day that the sages considered untouchable by productivity. The early morning was chief among them, not because rest is valuable, though it is, but because the mind in its empty state is capable of receiving instruction that the busy mind cannot access. There is a reason that the most important insights in human history, the mathematical theorems, the symphonies, the breakthroughs in science and commerce, arrived not in moments of frantic productivity, but in moments of quiet. The shower, the walk, the half-waking stillness of early morning. When you fill every moment from the first second of consciousness, you are telling the universe, and your own deeper intelligence, that there is no room. You have no vacancy, and prosperity, like wisdom, will not force itself through a door with no opening. Give your morning 15 minutes of intentional nothing. No podcast, no planning, no review of the list. Walk slowly. Sit with your hands open. Stare at the sky if there is one to stare at. This is not laziness. This is irrigation. You are creating channels through which something larger than your current thinking can flow. The most expensive real estate in your financial life is not a market or a contract or an investment vehicle. It is the interior space of your own unhurried mind in early morning. Protect it with the same ferocity with which you would protect a physical asset. Now, the fifth habit. I have been building toward this for a reason, because without the context of everything I have shared before it, the fifth habit sounds almost too simple. It sounds like something you have heard before, and yet in the way I am going to frame it for you, using a principle from the ancient wisdom that most modern interpreters have missed entirely, it will land differently. The fifth toxic morning habit is what I call nameless gratitude, and it is the most insidious of all five, because it masquerades as a virtue. Here is what nameless gratitude looks like. You wake up, and either because someone told you to or because you read it in a book, you practice gratitude. You think, I am grateful for my family. I am grateful for my health. I am grateful for this day. And you feel a brief, pleasant warmth, and then you move on. This is not gratitude. This is the shadow of gratitude. And the shadow, as you know, has no substance. The ancient teachers taught a form of morning blessing called the Birkat HaShachar, the dawn blessings, that is one of the most ingeniously engineered psychological protocols I have ever encountered across any tradition. Each blessing is devastatingly specific. Not, I am grateful for my body, but I acknowledge the precise miracle of eyes that open. I acknowledge the specific gift of feet that carry me. I acknowledge the particular wonder of a mind that can orient itself in time. Each specific thing named, held, received. Why does specificity matter so much? Because the brain cannot feel genuine gratitude for abstractions. Gratitude is a bodily experience. It lives in the chest and the throat and the hands. And it requires a concrete object to attach to. I am grateful for my health gives your nervous system nothing to hold. I am grateful that I woke up this morning with no pain in my knees. That lands, that registers, that changes the chemistry of your blood. And here is the financial dimension that no one talks about. Specific gratitude trains your reticular activating system, the neural filter that determines what your brain notices throughout the day, to identify what you already have of value. When you train it in the morning with specificity, it spends the rest of the day noticing opportunity rather than deficit. It notices the conversation that could become a partnership. It notices the skill you have that someone around you needs. It notices the door that was always open, but that you walked past 100 times because you had trained your attention to look for what was missing. The sages called this chidush ha'ayin, the renewal of seeing. And they understood, with a precision that is astonishing given the centuries between us, that the first renewal of seeing must happen in the morning, must be specific, and must be spoken aloud. Before you go to bed tonight, write down 3 specific things from today that you are grateful for. Not my family. The particular sound of a specific voice that you love. Not my work. The one sentence in an email that gave you a moment of genuine satisfaction. Do this every night, and use those specific memories as the material of your morning gratitude the next day. 72 hours. I am asking for 72 hours of this practice before you judge it. Because in the ancient wisdom, 72 hours is the minimum window for a new energetic pattern to take root in the physical world. This is not superstition. This is the recognition that the body and the mind need time, not years, not even weeks, just 3 days, to begin reorganizing around a new truth. Let me bring everything together. You have been waking up every morning and reaching for your phone before your feet touch the floor. You have been rehearsing your wounds as though loyalty to your past is the same as preparation for your future. You have been eating in chaos and wondering why your decisions feel clouded. You have been filling every silence with noise and wondering why inspiration never seems to come. And you have been practicing the shadow of gratitude instead of the substance, naming the abstract and wondering why it never moves you. These 5 habits are not character flaws. They are not evidence of weakness or unworthiness. They are patterns, and patterns can be changed. Not in a year, not in a month. Often, when the change is real and grounded in principles that have survived thousands of years of human testing in 72 hours. The vessel is cracked only if you keep filling it the same way. Begin tomorrow differently, not with 10 changes, with 1. Choose the one among these 5 that you recognized most deeply in yourself, the one that made you feel slightly uncomfortable, slightly exposed, slightly known. And begin there, just there. The others will follow, because the Shachar gate opens from the inside. Now, before you leave, I want to make one thing clear. If you have stayed with me through this entire teaching, you are not an average person. Average people leave. You stayed. That tells me something about you. It tells me that there is a part of you that has been waiting for someone to speak to the intelligent, capable, searching soul that you actually are, rather than the distracted consumer that most content treats you as. This channel exists for that part of you. If you are not yet subscribed, I want to invite you, not ask, invite, to become part of this community. We explore these principles every week: the ancient wisdom, the practical application, the honest conversation about what it actually takes to build a life of real abundance, rather than the performance of it. Click the subscribe button below and ring the notification bell, because the teachings I share here are not the kind you want to miss by accident. And leave me a comment, right now. Tell me, which of these 5 habits spoke to you most directly? Which one do you recognize in your own mornings? I read every response, every single one. Because you are not an audience to me. You are a continuation of a conversation that began long before either of us was born. Until next time, walk through the gate with intention. Shalom.